handpicked, you know her, she handpicked all of the components of this service, and I was telling Glenn, who's sweet enough to play for us today, that she probably had imagined some great hall, you know, with a huge pipe organ, and I think this is much more intimate and much more fitting, and thank you all so much for coming. So the first thing that she asked for us to do, and I think it's pretty fitting, is to sing hymn number 263, "The Strife is O'er." And if you've known Beth for a long time, you know that she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease when she was about 50, and she lived to 89, and was quite a fighter. And we'll talk a lot about that fighting but gentle spirit today. So number 263, and Anita,
The 23rd Psalm, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.
Awesome. Let us join together in praying the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Carl has put together what we hope will be technically a wonderful slideshow, and the soundtrack is all my mother. And some of you didn't get to know her until her voice wasn't quite the amazing instrument that it was early on. So we're going to watch this and listen to my mom, and then we'll share some remembrances. Deb, can you dim our lights a little bit? Thank you. blows me away. You saw the visual chronology there. Elizabeth Margaret Corrigan was born November 1st, 1925, the first child in her family born outside of Ireland, to her immigrant parents Hugh and Ellen, and joining her two older sisters Rosemary and Eileen, both deceased. She was joined by younger brothers Joe, now deceased, and Ray, who continues to live in the family house on Alma Avenue in Toronto, and we call her faithfully every Sunday. Mom was the quintessential Irish Rose. She was a very pretty child and was discovered literally as a tot to have a remarkable voice and enormous musical talent, a highly valued gift in Irish culture. Her sister Rosemary paid for her first music lessons and put her on a path toward becoming a local star in the Royal Canadian Opera Company and the CBC radio, which you heard at the start of the slideshow. In the fall of 1951, Mom decided to travel to France to take a year off to rest her voice and reflect on whether she wanted to continue on her current professional path. On board the ship Scythia, and you saw a photograph of that, she met her lifelong friend, Pat Harvey, possibly Canada's oldest still competing senior Olympian, who writes of that time in these words, "You know, our friendship started by accident, so to speak, since Beth, who was resting her voice for a year, had decided to join her Europe-bound fellow music student, Jenny Lippert, who was the sister of Jane Lippert, who was an art student with me. And we all met up on the little Cunard liner Scythia going to Europe in the fall of 1951, a terrible crossing, by the way. These are Pat's words. Jenny went on to Vienna to study singing. Beth and Jane and I rented a room together in a grimy working-class section of Paris. After a couple of months, Jane decided that Paris was not for her and left to join Jenny in Vienna. So there were Beth and I in that unheated room in the bitter winter of 1951-52. We were young and hardy, so we soon learned how to beat the cold by spending the evenings sitting bundled in our sleeping bags reading. We'd have our books, cheap paperbacks, clutched in one hand held outside the bag. When it froze, we'd change hands. We learned a lot that winter. How to put on our underwear, which we took into bed with us so it wouldn't be icy in the morning without getting out of bed. How to make do with a quick crotch and armpits wash, since there was no running water in the room and we were allowed only one bath a week. How to entertain ourselves without spending any money. And since there were no tourists in that early post-war period, we learned how to speak French in a hurry. Beth and I hit it off right away. We had a commonality of mind that bound us together very intensely and has never deserted us. Later, when our friend Audrey arrived, I should say burst like a bomb into our midst to take up the third place that Jane had abandoned, we found it quite difficult to get used to her. Beth, who could type, found a good job at the American Embassy. Eventually, I ran out of money and had to go to England to get work, so our paths parted. But that period of hardship that Beth and I endured together, it was cold, we knew no one, our rented room was far from comfortable, we had no money, remains for me one of the most treasured memories of my life. Funny how in retrospect, despite the chilling cold, I recall it as a very warm time. Pat and my mom remained devoted friends until Mom's death. In fact, we called Pat in Mom's room with Mama there. While in Paris, Mom met my father in Louis Descourt, then a doctoral student at the Sorbonne. They married and had my brother Jack, barely in that order, in 1954. When my dad finished his program, they returned to the U.S., first to South Carolina, where I was born in 1957, and then to Hollins College, now Hollins University, where they lived until moving to Stanton in 1962. Many of you here know Mama from that time. Mom had various secretarial jobs, but was really known locally for all of her many performances at Hollins, Mary Baldwin, and other venues in the Stanton area. She sang regularly for many years for both Trinity Episcopal Church and the Temple House of Israel Synagogue. In anticipation of the dissolution of her marriage, Mom enrolled at Mary Baldwin and graduated 3 years later, Phi Beta Kappa, with majors in both French and Spanish. She taught for Augusta County Schools from 1978 until 1985, when she married her most persistent suitor, Milos Velimirovic, a renowned musicologist at the University of Virginia. Princess Beth had finally found her prince in Mish, a devoted partner who gave her the later life stage she had always desired. They made a lovely and gracious home together in Ivy and enjoyed many trips to Washington, New York, and the Spoleto Festival in Charleston for opera performances, along with a coterie of like-minded friends like Rob and Paul and Mary and many others. Mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 1980 after what we now realize was many years of misdiagnosis. She fought the disease like a true Irish woman. She stayed current on the research on Parkinson's, participating in a research trial that was very hard on her, having a deep brain stimulator implanted in her brain, and organizing and participating in Parkinson's support groups in Charlottesville and in Bridgewater. Phyllis, you were there, until dementia with Lewy bodies that routinely co-occurs with PD made that impossible. The move to Bridgewater in 2004 was a concession to the care that Mom and Mish knew she would need in the future. It was hard for them to leave their life in Charlottesville, but both of them worked to make a life in Bridgewater. My brother's untimely death in 2005, Mom's continued deterioration from Parkinson's, and Mish's exhaustion from providing round-the-clock support landed them both in the hospital in pretty short order, requiring Mom to move to nursing care and Mish to assisted living. He visited her without fail at least twice daily, a true prince to the end, and left us in April of 2008. Mama's adjustment to nursing home life amazed me. She reached out to everyone there, challenging my long-time sense that she was a bit of a snob. She dined daily with farm women and factory workers, retired educators and fundamentalist theists, right-wing Republicans, Democrats, and every kind of person who lands for a time in a nursing home. The Lewy body's dementia freed her from the sad fate of being wheelchair-bound, taking her on trips back in time and place where she performed to the acclaim of vast audiences, folding time back on itself, where she could be dressed in the morning by her sisters, have my brother interrupt a fine dinner she was hosting by singing Plaisir d'amour in French. He was tone deaf and couldn't speak French. Direct a performance of Sound of Music or Oklahoma, that was the latest one. Run from teachers at the conservatory and have Mish pick up the dry cleaning, all the same day. Sometimes she could share those travels with us, and other times she couldn't engage with us during those travels. My dear friend Ruthie and I used to refer to that as Mama was out riding the Vespa, and so you see a Vespa there symbolically. The day before she died, Carl and Joanna and I had a lovely visit with her where she announced that she was getting married next weekend. I said, "That's wonderful, Mama. Who are you marrying?" "I have 2 men in love with me," she said. "Who are they, Mama?" "One of them is Ulysses, my father, and the other is Mish." "So who have you chosen, Mama?" "I have chosen Mish." And she went on to tell me why she thought they would be a good match. I said that Mish's birthday was next week, and she reminded me, yes, that it was the 10th. We marveled at how she remembered that and thought it had been an exceptional visit. She left us very quietly the next evening without any indication that her plans involved leaving us to go meet Mish. Neither were believers, but it makes one wonder what kind of wedding feast they enjoyed. The princess and the prince may well have found one another again. So I invite you to please come and share a memory. Catherine, I know you have one.
My name is Catherine. I've been Laura's friend since she was 4 and I was 4. She's my best friend in the entire world. And I'll be a bit of a twofer. I just want to say a couple of things myself, and then my father, who knew, as we knew her, as Betty, wrote a little something he asked me to read. My father, Ben Smith, was a professor at Mary Baldwin, and that's how we came together. Laura's mom had a lot of names. I knew her as Mrs. Debs, and I always called her that. And I knew her from a child's perspective. I didn't know the word then, but I know it now because I found her to be rather cosmopolitan, and that was so foreign to me. And she worked so hard to bring a little culture to me, to teach me the ways. I think I averaged about a C- in the end. In their dining room, there was a vent in the ceiling, and Laura and I would be upstairs, and you could lie next to the vent and hear absolutely everything that was said at these dinner parties. They were remarkable things, and we learned remarkable things. Mrs. Daz provided SpaghettiOs and strawberry Nesquik. So, Laura and I would, skip school and end up over there eating cold SpaghettiOs and drinking pink milk and having the time of our lives. She gave us a lot of latitude and a lot of freedom to explore who we were and what our friendship could become. She taught me French, she helped me with French, she would laugh. She was my best friend's mother, and therefore a mother to me. And the greatest gift she gave me was Laura. And I don't know how we affect each other, and I don't know, how we affect our children. And I don't know that Ms. Des knew what she was doing, but she gave me a friend whose loyalty humbles me, and whose love I cherish. And I count and thank Mrs. Des as a key, however it happens, for who we are or who we're not. I hold Laura close at this time, especially and always. So Mrs. Des was quite something. I'll try to be more cultured as I grow older. And I want to share with you, Dad and I were speaking a couple of times after we learned that she had died. And he was talking about having just watched an old rerun of Downton Abbey, in which Carson says to Mrs. Hughes, "The business of life is the acquisition of memories. In the end, that's all there is." He wrote a letter. "Dear Betty, I wish I were there with your family and other gathered friends to celebrate your life, but a quick trip from Baltimore to Bridgewater and back is a little much for this old codger. I hope that someone, Laura maybe, has your recipe for shrimp and garlic butter. I've tried to duplicate it several times but never have succeeded. You were a great cook and a charming hostess. But what I really treasure is the way you afforded all of this food for the spirit. And if laughter is a spiritual gift, and I'm sure it is, I've never laughed as heartily and as hard with anyone else. Do you remember our gathering one before?" He sang with her at the temple. "Or was it Rosh Hashanah? You and Ruth McNeil and I were giving the music our best shot when a fortissimo response came up. Only we had our signals crossed and we launched 3 totally different pieces of music. We regrouped as quickly as we could, and fortunately, we were hidden away in an alcove. But you and I, in spite of our best efforts, were completely out of control. And there it was, the best laugh of my life. No one was better than you in knowing how ridiculous life can be. You understood. You made the best of it,